All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking something that is deeply complex, usually hidden, and honestly, absolutely fascinating to analyze. We're looking at the hidden mechanics behind covert emotional control. If you've ever felt completely spun around by the reality behind closed doors, where a relationship looks totally fine to the outside world, but feels incredibly disorienting when you're actually in it, well, this explainer is going to validate that exact experience. We're going to map out precisely how this hidden system actually works. To kick things off, picture this visceral story from our source material. It's the night before the absolute biggest interview of your entire career. You need rest, right? You need to focus. But instead, you find yourself trapped in this massive, draining, 3-hour argument over how the dishwasher was loaded. Seriously. So you get maybe 4 hours of sleep and you drag yourself to this huge interview feeling like you're recovering from major surgery. Now, for years, you might just file a night like that away under bad luck. But that story brilliantly sets up our core question. We really have to ask ourselves, are these perfectly timed relationship blowups genuinely just a string of bad luck? Or are they actually part of a highly scheduled, almost mechanical system? Because here's the thing, when you start looking at the aggregate data over a span of years, the whole random bad luck theory completely falls apart. Randomness doesn't have a shape, but as we're about to see, these conflicts absolutely do. Okay, let's get right into Section 1, timing of the conflict, or the illusion of randomness. So, if you step back and actually plot these conflicts on a calendar over time, it's wild. They cluster together with almost mathematical precision. First off, they predictably happen on the eve of big life events, like that job interview we talked about, right when your energy is desperately needed elsewhere. Second, they hit on holidays or big saved-up vacations. Third, they strike when you are at your most vulnerable, maybe you're bedridden with the flu or navigating a personal grief. And fourth, and honestly this is the most counterintuitive one, they happen exactly when things have been genuinely peaceful for a stretch. It's kind of like a thermostat kicking in, just to cool down the warmth. To really understand why this happens, just contrast how an ordinary Tuesday is treated versus a special occasion. Ruining a random Tuesday, that costs very little. There's no real investment there. But a holiday or a big anniversary, you've sunk money, planning, and a ton of emotional hope into that day. And that makes it incredibly valuable leverage. It's essentially a system of hostage economics. The special day is held hostage because your attention is supposed to be on the event. But this sudden conflict forces the entire household's attention squarely back onto the person creating the crisis. Moving on to Section 2, trading yourself for peace, which really covers the slow erosion of the self. You have to realize, you don't just lose your sense of self overnight. It doesn't work like that. You trade yourself away in these tiny, defensible little pieces. Let's walk through a step-by-step breakdown of this tariff system in action. Step 1. You exert a little bit of autonomy. Maybe you just plan a casual night out with some friends. Step 2. Suddenly, an unexplained cold front descends at home. The whole atmosphere just freezes over. Step 3. Because you're already exhausted by the tension, you just cancel your plans. And Step 4. Instantly, the warmth returns. Now, nobody explicitly banned you from going out. You just rationally priced yourself out of your own life because paying the invisible tariff of a 3-day silent treatment was just way too high. That brings us to Section 3, the functional shell trap, and why men in particular tend to hide this erosion. It is fascinating to look at the massive disconnect between a person's external metrics and their internal reality here. On paper, this guy is totally crushing it. He's been promoted twice at work, the mortgage is paid on time, the lawn is perfectly mowed, he's out there coaching the kids' sports teams. It is a glowing green light dashboard of competence. But if you look internally, his inner monologue is constantly being monitored. He is deeply, bone-tiringly exhausted. Fun literally feels like administrative paperwork, and he can't even remember what his own personal preferences are anymore. The roles in his life are staffed, sure, but the actual person, they've kind of left the building. And that leads us to this incredibly powerful realization. Function is not selfhood. If you are experiencing this, listen to me. You are not losing your mind. You are just recognizing a pattern. Maintaining an intact, highly functional shell does not mean your core sense of self hasn't been quietly erased over time. You can, unfortunately, be a fully operational monument to a missing person. Let's shift gears to Section 4, the red line moment, which is exactly when that illusion finally breaks. This is really the emotional peak of our explainer. There's another incredibly telling story from the source material here. A man comes home deeply shaken after a terrifying 6-hour wait at the hospital for his father's health scare. He finally lets his guard down, gets a bit emotional sitting at the kitchen table. His partner walks over, places a cup of tea in front of him with this tight, cold expression, and just says, "You might want to sort yourself out before the kids get back." In that one flash, his normal defense machinery goes completely offline, and he sees it crystal clear. His vulnerability is being treated purely as an inconvenience. We define this as the red line, and it's almost never a massive, screaming fight. It's usually a tiny cognitive event, often under 90 seconds, where your brain's normal translation machinery just fails. You finally see the raw feed of what's happening. And when you do, it's like 15 years of confusing past data suddenly re-indexes in your brain. Imagine a massive spreadsheet sorting itself on a brand new column. Everything just clicks into a single, undeniable shape. And once you see that pattern, you absolutely cannot unsee it. But wow, we have to be incredibly careful right here. There is a huge trap called competence override that a lot of people fall right into once they cross that red line. You might get this sudden insight into the exact mechanics of the cage you're living in, and you think to yourself, great, I see the system now, so I can just outsmart it. I can manage it. But you have to remember this critical distinction. Having insight into a harmful environment is not the same thing as making an exit from it. Being the cleverest person navigating a cage means you're still just living inside a cage. Finally, let's look at Section 5, Reclaiming Your Interrupted Life, and go over some practical survival steps. So here are some really grounded, below-the-radar survival steps you can start taking today, well before any major life decisions are ever made. First, just keep a private calendar. Log the dates and the conflicts so you have the aggregate data right in front of you. Because, let's face it, memory can be manipulated, but a spreadsheet can't. Second, and this is huge, stop pre-announcing your big events. If the system doesn't know the dates, you physically prevent the pattern from targeting your calendar. Third, build yourself a pre-event airlock. Maybe stay at a friend's place the night before a big interview just to protect your energy. Fourth, audit that inner voice of yours. Are you actually outgrowing your hobbies, or are you just avoiding the hidden tariff? And fifth, establish at least one safe external mirror, like an old friend or therapist, someone who remembers the original you. As we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you with a really profound thought from our sources to reflect on. Imagine there's a dusty box up in your loft. Inside it are old concert tickets, photos with your friends, maybe a favorite book with your own handwritten notes in the margins. It represents the person you were before the erosion started. Ask yourself, what parts of your former self have been quietly traded away into storage? And, perhaps more importantly, knowing what you know right now, how can you pick up a pen and start writing in the margins of your own life again today?